Have you ever wondered the difference between chipping and pitching? If so, you want to definitely stay tuned. I'm going to cover exactly the difference and how you can get up and down with each one. Alright, so if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe below and hit that bell button. That'll keep you up to date on all the things that we're going to be adding over the next few weeks. So make sure you stay connected to the channel. That way you don't miss out on anything. With that said, let's go ahead and jump in. So the difference between chipping and pitching is quite simple. One of the things I always tell my students is what you're looking at. So for an example, if I look behind me, I got between myself and the actual pin, all right, and the difference that I have between myself and the green, what I'm looking for is how much air time and then how much rollout time do I need, okay? So for this example here, I got a little bit of distance between the green, but I also have a lot of green to work with, okay? So there's two different styles of this. The number one thing is for a chip shot, it's less air time and it gets on the green as quickly as possible. And then for a pitch shot, it's more air time, okay, and less rollout. That's the simplest way to define the difference between a chip and a pitch. Okay, but now if you go to Europe, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of the shots around there, they always call it a chip. No matter what it is, if it's off the green, they call it a chip shot. So that's a cool little thing that I learned not too long ago. Now, how do you set up for both of these? All right, and the way you go about setting up for each one is simple. When you go to a chip shot, one of the things that I always like to see with a player, and the number one thing I always look at is what are the pros doing, okay? So everything that I give you guys, I try to make sure that whatever we cover in our instruction, that it's backed by what actual great players are doing themselves, okay? So if you ever look at a chip shot on TV with some of the guys, what they're looking at is they're going to play the ball position about middle of the stance, sometimes a little bit back. There's definitely a variance here, and there's no right or wrong. It just really depends on the type of shot that you're hitting. But let's just start at the base level here, okay? So the best place to start is ball position is going to be just in the middle back, okay? Not way off the back foot for right now. And then what you're looking for is, if I were to set up like this, for example, so if this is my full swing setup, this is really important. This angle that I create right here, and if I bring it up here to left arm parallel to the ground, and I just do a simple rotation of my left forearm, you can see that this club is traveling quite a bit, okay? So there's a power source here, all right? But in this part of the game, you don't necessarily need that power source. So what would be a more simple way to go about doing it? Well, this is why you see a lot of players, instead of setting up way out here like this in a normal setup, they're actually bringing it closer and going more upright. Just like if you were putting, so if my putting setup was something like this right here, my chip shot would be very similar, except, of course, I got a little bit longer club right here. I have a 7-iron in hand. And again, this is going to differ based on the type of shot, how long it is, and I'm going to cover that in a second. So when you look at doing this, the number one thing that you're looking for is shaft more upright, okay? Not too far where you're way off the ground, but just enough where it's kind of leaning more toward the toe. Okay, and then ball position in the middle back stance. And then one of the things I like to do is once you set up like this, if this is putter neutral setup, you definitely want to make sure the hands are placed forward a little bit. You want to make sure this butt end of the club is almost pointing at your left hip pocket. All right, so what it looks like here at its setup would be simply this position right here. Now the key for this type of swing is to make sure that you're doing like a putting stroke motion. One of the things I like to do is to basically keep this back of this left wrist flat as can be. Do not let this break down, okay? So when you do this motion, it would look like this right here. And as you notice when I'm doing this, there's not a whole lot of lower body movement. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing any of that. It's really more of a waist up type motion. Just a little bit of a wiggle room with the knees. And if it's a shorter shot, of course, it's going to be no lower body at all. And that's how you would make a motion for a chip shot. So if I set up and hit this, this is what it would look like here. Take a couple practice swings. Ball position middle. And then go ahead. Now for the first one, it's not bad, and we just aerified the greens in case you cannot see that behind me. So that's definitely going to have an effect on rollout. But one thing that I really want to touch on about the rollouts and the landing zone, this is so important. Because whenever you're trying to determine what type of shot or what type of club that you should hit, the number one thing that you should always look for is how far am I off the green, okay? And then based on that, how close is the pin to the edge of the green, all right? So in this scenario, you can see if we were to break it down in like thirds, I got 1/3 here to the green's edge, and then it's 2/3 from the green's edge to the pin, okay? So this is definitely a shot that I would want to make sure that I'm using a chip for, okay? And there is a graphic that I'll try to attach here at the end of this video that you can see. Arnold Palmer posted this way back, and there's a lot of truth to this, and I really love the graphic because what he talks about in that picture is, you know, if you're going to like a pin, let's say the pin is 20 feet shorter, okay? So I wouldn't necessarily want to use a 7-iron here. Maybe I want to use a 9 or a pitching wedge, okay? Because it's going to be a less rollout, okay? But it's still getting the ball up in the air just enough to where it gets on the green and rolls out, right? If it gets any closer to the green's edge, then I got to start changing up things here. So then I got to start thinking, okay, how true is this grass here to where I could try to do a bump and run shot through the fringe, kind of like if you see guys play in the Open Championship. I could do that. Or what I try to do at the last case scenario is a pitch shot. And the reason why is there's a lot more that can go wrong with a pitch shot. Why? Because it's a longer swing, okay? So the golden rule that I always give all of my students is if you hit a series of 10 shots, okay, out of those 10 shots, track and see what are the concentrated results. But more importantly, track and see what your misses are. That's going to be the name of the game right there. The name of the game is not about hitting the best shot every time. It's about making your misses better, okay? So as you saw in that swing I did for the chip, let's just say for an example, like I really screw this one up. I'm going to actually purposely try to top this, okay? Just like that. And I topped that shot, but because it's such a concentrated swing, I got away with a decent shot there, okay? Now, why is that important? Because whenever you start going into a pitch shot, what's going to happen is you're going to take a longer swing. And I know this is something that you guys have seen in the past. But what happens when you start going to a longer swing with this type of shot? Well, for one, there's a lot more that can go wrong. I can hit it fat, the ball goes right here in front of me. If I hit it with a top or a thin shot, that ball is nowhere near this green. It's probably going to be way over the green, okay? And it goes back to what I was just talking about. You know, it's about making your misses better. So which one would you rather have, a shot that's over the green, or would you rather have the one that I topped and I'm still about 10, 12 feet away from the pin, okay? It's a no-brainer, right? But there are going to be scenarios where you have to hit the pitch shot, okay? Now, how do we go about hitting it? So pitch shot is a little bit different. Instead of the ball position being way back, it can be. I'm not going to go into detail on those of you that don't know me. My mentor is David Orr, phenomenal coach in the short game arena. He's worked with guys like Justin Rose, Paul Casey, numerous others on tour. And one of the things that I remember from working with him, he talked about what we call trail leg. You know, guys that hit shots off the trail leg, and then you also got lead arm, and then you got guys that are kind of in the middle, okay? But for right now, let's just cover really quickly just a basic setup here, okay? So where you want to go with this is put the ball position a little bit middle to the front, all right? And the big thing that you have to get right with a pitch shot is you need to use the wedge in your favor, okay? What do I mean by that? Well, if you lean with the shaft forward, okay, notice my handle of the club is getting way forward here. What's exposing here? This leading edge, okay? So if I lead with this leading edge here, that's going to hit the turf and it's going to dig right into the ground. Not what we want. So what do we want to do instead? We want to take this shaft and make it more neutral, and then also a little bit leaning back. Why? Because we want to use the bounce of the wedge, okay? Andrew Rice did a really good video on this a while back, and I loved seeing this in slow motion. I thought it was really cool. And what he did, he showed a video of like something ridiculous, like 1,000 frames or 2,000 frames per second. And what was amazing was when he got the wedge set up correctly, it showed on camera the club was already starting to make contact with the grass in the ground way back here. But because he's using the bounce of the wedge, it just glided across the ground, and he actually hit a really good wedge shot. But if you had taken that same swing, but instead made contact with the hands way forward, how many of you ever done that right there? Right? A lot of us have. And it's not a fun shot to hit. So what you want to do is make sure ball position is forward in the stance. Not way forward, but just about middle front. Shaft lean is going to be about neutral. And the way you go about hitting this type of shot or doing a motion is definitely making sure we're using a little bit more of our body. Okay? So as you're seeing here, we're trying to get the shoulders, the arms, hands, and the hips in what we call like the same RPM. All right? So we're trying to keep it in the same motion. Now, one of the best things I have learned from doing this, actually back up for a second, is to do a drill with the alignment stick attached. But let me show you why that's important. Too often with players, when they try to hit a pitch shot, they break everything down, their hips stall, and then that's where everything collapses. What you want to do instead is make sure that the hips, arms, body, and club go around the curve as you see there. So that way we're not breaking those hands down, and we're not trying to make it really inconsistent at impact here. So that's where the alignment stick comes into play. So for this, you take the alignment stick, attach it halfway down the shaft just like this. And naturally this is going to move ball position a little bit more forward in your stance. But what we're trying to do is just get the motion down. Okay, so what's the purpose of the alignment stick? For number one, what it does is it forces you to get and clear the left side, because you do not want this alignment stick to hit your side. If I try to flip and I don't move my hips, look what happens. It's going to give me immediate feedback, and this is exactly what you want for this shot. Okay, so this is the number one issue I see with most players, and that when you start doing the alignment stick drill like that right there, and you try to prevent yourself from hitting the side, then you can keep this flat, and it allows you to do a simple basic pitch shot motion. This will serve you guys very well. So how do we go about hitting this shot? Attach it halfway down, just like this, and set up. Just a little simple motion here. And one of the beautiful things about using this drill, what it naturally does, and I absolutely love it, those of you that love to see the Jordan Spieth one hop type shot, this basically helps train the angle of attack where it needs to be for a 56, 60 degree shot. So you'll appreciate this, and those of you that hit some spinners, comment below that you got it down. I'd love to hear the feedback from you. So one more time, halfway down the shaft just like that. Taking a few practice swings. You do not want that stick to hit your side. Then when you get comfortable with that a few times, then you can let loose, hit one, see how it goes. And there's that spinner. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the differences between the pitch and the chip. And like I said, if you're enjoying this video, please subscribe below and hit that like button. I really appreciate that as we're trying to grow the channel. And thanks so much for joining.